Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Toop, and I have the honor to serve as President and Vice Chancellor of the University of British Columbia. Every year at Congregation, UBC bestows honorary degrees upon individuals who, in the opinion of the university community, have fit the criteria of excellence and eminence in their chosen field. Alanis Obomsawin is one of those individuals, and I invite her now to step forward to receive her honorary degree. Madam Chancellor, Dr. Alanis Obomsawin is one of Canada's most distinguished documentary filmmakers. For more than 40 years, she has directed documentaries at the National Film Board with strong social content, inspired by a desire to let the voices of her people be heard. A member of the Abenaki Nation, she was born in New Hampshire, but spent her early years on the Odanak Reserve north of Montreal, absorbing the songs and legends of her people. It was her later difficult experiences as the only First Nations student in her school that sparked a desire to bring change. Dr. Obomsawin began her career as a singer, writer, and storyteller, and launched into filmmaking in 1967. She's made more than 30 uncompromising documentaries on issues affecting Aboriginal peoples in Canada. Her film, Kanasataki, 270 Years of Resistance, made in 1993, and the first in a series about the 1990 Oka crisis, is one of her best-known films and has won 18 international awards. Among her many other films, she has also produced Our Nationhood, which chronicles the determination of the Listugush Mi'kmaq people to manage the natural resources of their traditional lands. University communities should pay attention to her 2009 film entitled Since When Do We Divorce the Right Answer from an Honest Answer?, telling the story of unconventional former McGill University professor Norman Cornett. Dr. Obomsawin is an officer of the Order of Canada. She's a lifetime member of the Board of Directors of the Aboriginal Peoples Television Network and a member of the Board for the Public Broadcasting System in Vermont and National Geographic International. Madam Chancellor, to recognize the outstanding contributions made to our understanding of vital social, First Nations, and Aboriginal issues, I ask you to confer the degree of Doctor of Letters honoris causa upon Alanis Obomsawin.
By authority of the Senate of this university, I confer upon you, Alanis Obomsawin, the title and degree Doctor of Letters honoris causa.
It now gives me great pleasure to ask Dr. Obomsawin to say a few words.
It's so fast. Mr. President, Madame the Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you to the University of British Columbia and its jury for choosing me to receive this very prestigious honor. A special thanks to all my colleagues who have worked with me over the years. It takes courage and dedication to make sure the voices of all are heard. The National Film Board of Canada has done this for 71 years, the CBC for 74 years, the Banff Centre for 77 years, and Canada Council for 53 years. Several other federal and provincial institutions continue to work hard to help our society grow and flourish. In this province, there is a very fine Indigenous school in Penticton, Inoquin Center. In 2008, in the month of March, I spent 3 weeks in this university where I visited sometimes 3 or 4 classes a day to screen films and debate their content, and to encourage and honor the students in their studies. I was overwhelmed by the great opportunity and openness of UBC for its students, including its 500 First Nations students. In one of the classrooms attended by 30 students, a mixture from all over the world, including First Nations students, they share the will to do something to create a better world for our people. It was a very moving experience for me and made me feel the future is in good hands. I felt that I did not have to worry so much anymore. And that is what makes Canada so special. In the early 60s, some of us began to organize and travel across the country. Previously, as a young person, I had no knowledge of all the different nations in our country. In my time in Odanak, Quebec, a Wabanaki reservation, I hardly ever went across the railroad tracks to the next door village. So it was so magical to meet people of different nations and for us to feel so connected to each other. Yes, they were all my relations. 1960 brought changes in many parts of the world, including Canada. That is when we were recognized as Canadian citizens of our country. We now had the right to celebrate, to have ceremonies, to have powwows, and that is when the underground traditions and values came to the surface. We did not have to be afraid anymore of being arrested for gathering and taking part in sacred ceremonies. The sound of the drum was heard, and the heartbeat of the people was calling, and love was everywhere. In 1951, when the United Nations forced Canada to look at its treatment of its First Nations people, the result was tremendous. That is when, for the first time, we were given the right to a university education without having to deny who we were as First Nations people in this country. Before, you had to move away from your loved ones on the reserve, stay in the city, living like white people, You were given a bit of money and had to renounce your legal status as an Indian. There was no return. Your people called you a traitor. Your children lost all rights to their heritage. In the 60s, we sometimes would hear of a First Nation person who had graduated in a specific discipline in a university somewhere in Canada. It would be a big conversation topic in all the villages. This way of spreading news by word of mouth was called the moccasin telegraph. It was so rare for anyone to have had that opportunity. Today, as I speak to you, there are over 23,000 young First Nation students who are registered, of course, at universities and colleges in Canada. And I'm sure there are thousands of others that have the same background but not registered are also studying. The last 50 years have brought about so many changes, especially in education. Gone are the Indian residential schools. Imagine, we have our own channel station, APTN, our own national radio station, Aboriginal Voices, and a whole crew of people making films telling their own stories. Several of our languages are being taught in the community schools and in some universities. I would like to say a very special thanks to all the people who dedicate their time to help the children of the world whose childhood has been stolen. Je veux dire merci à la vie de m'avoir donné le temps de voir de si grands changements. I am so grateful to life for having given me time to see such changes and so much hope for the future generations. I want to tell you that I feel so honored to address you on one of the most important days of your life. You have succeeded a most difficult task. Some of you came from far to study here and have perhaps not always been encouraged or supported the way you should have. I commend you for reaching your goal. You are our future leaders. It is good not just for you, but for your family and for your country and for the future of your children. Thank you. If my arms were long enough, I would hug you all in one shot. Thank you.
Merci, Madame la docteure Obomsawin, pour votre présence cet après-midi.